At a family gathering, my uncle tried to embarrass me in front of everyone for not helping him pay off his debt. He pointed at me and shouted, "You owe us for your success." I stood up, pulled out a piece of paper, and said, "Then explain this." When he saw it, his face turned pale. I never thought a simple family gathering could turn into one of the most satisfying moments of my life, but it did. To give you some background, my family has never been very stable. There's always been drama, about money, old grudges, or just petty arguments. I've spent most of my life staying away from it, but I still try to be polite. I keep my distance but show up for big events, partly because I feel like I have to, and partly to keep things looking normal. Now, my uncle, let's call him Frank, has always been the troublemaker in the family, but not in a sad, misunderstood way. No, Frank is the kind of person who blames everyone else for his problems, never takes responsibility, and always has some new plan to get rich fast. He never keeps a job for long, always has excuses for why things go wrong, and is constantly borrowing money, promising to pay it back. Spoiler, he never does. I've never gotten involved in his messes. I worked really hard to get where I am today. I didn't grow up with money. I worked multiple jobs, took out loans, and gave up a lot to build my career. No handouts, no shortcuts, but according to Frank, my success was because of the family. Now, back to the gathering. It was a big family reunion at my cousin's house. I didn't really want to go, but I knew skipping it would cause more drama, and I didn't want to deal with that. At first, everything was fine, small talk, decent food, catching up with cousins I actually liked. But then Frank stood up, cleared his throat, and walked to the middle of the room. The moment I saw his smug look, I knew something was coming. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, dragging out his words like he was putting on a show, "I want to talk about something important, something that affects not just me, but all of us." People quieted down and paid attention. I took a sip of my drink and prepared myself. "You see," he went on, "family is about supporting each other. It's about being there when someone needs help. But some people here," he paused and looked right at me, "seem to have forgotten that." I could feel the tension in the room. I sighed, already tired of whatever he was about to say. "My dear nephew here," he said, pointing at me dramatically, "has done very well for himself, big house, nice car, vacations, living the good life, and that's great, really it is." His tone was fake and sarcastic. "But what about the people who helped you get there? What about the family that supported you, raised you, and made sacrifices so you could have the opportunities you did?" I just stared at him, not reacting, as he kept talking. "I've been going through a tough time," he said, shaking his head and playing the victim. "All I've asked for is a little help, a little generosity from someone who has more than enough. But instead, I get ignored, left to struggle while my own family lives in luxury." People started whispering. Some looked at me curiously, while others just seemed uncomfortable. My mom, sitting across the room, was already rubbing her temples. She knew Frank was full of it. "But that's not how family should be, is it?" Frank said, his voice getting louder. "Family helps each other. Family doesn't turn their back when someone is drowning. So I ask you all, is it fair that my own nephew refuses to help me while he sits on a fortune?" And there it was, his big, dramatic accusation. He stood there, waiting for the room to react, expecting people to turn on me. Maybe he thought they'd pressure me into giving him money, but instead, the room went silent. Everyone was looking at me. I let the silence hang for a moment before I stood up. I wasn't angry, if anything, I was amused, because Frank didn't know I was ready for this. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and held it up. "That's really interesting, Frank," I said calmly, "because if I owe you so much, maybe you can explain this." I unfolded the paper and showed it to everyone. Frank's face turned white the second he saw it. It was a legal document, a contract, with his signature on it, and it showed something very interesting. Frank's face lost all color when he saw the paper. He knew exactly what it was, but I wasn't going to let him wiggle out of this. I held it up higher so everyone could see. "This," I said, my voice steady but firm, "is a signed loan agreement between Frank and me." The room went completely silent. I turned to the crowd to make sure everyone was paying attention. A few years ago, when Frank was in a tough spot, his words, not mine, I lent him a lot of money, but I wasn't stupid. I made him sign a contract saying he'd pay me back in 2 years. I paused to let that sink in. That was 5 years ago. People started shifting in their seats, whispering to each other. My mom sighed and shook her head. She wasn't surprised. I turned back to Frank, who was now sweating. "You never paid me back," I said, my voice sharp. Not a single cent. And you never planned to, did you? He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I wasn't done. You want to talk about family, Frank? I asked, stepping closer. You say family supports each other, but what do you call lying, manipulating, and stealing? His face twitched. It's not like that, he stammered. I was going to pay you back, but what? I cut him off. You've had 5 years, and now, instead of trying to pay me back, you're standing here in front of everyone, trying to guilt me into giving you even more money. The room was tense. No one was on Frank's side now. Even the relatives who usually gave him the benefit of the doubt looked disgusted. But then, just when I thought I had him cornered, he snapped. Frank suddenly pointed a shaking finger at me, his face turning red. Oh, don't act so high and mighty, he yelled. You think you're better than us just because you have money? You think you did everything on your own? Who do you think raised you? Who fed you when you were a kid? Who made sacrifices so you could go to school? His voice got louder and angrier. You owe us, all of us. You wouldn't be here without this family. There it was, the real reason behind his little speech. I should have seen it coming. Frank wasn't just after my money. He wanted to rewrite history. He wanted to make it seem like my success was his success, like I owed the family everything. I took a deep breath, then slowly pulled out another piece of paper. Okay, Frank, I said, keeping my voice calm, since we're talking about the past, let's talk about the real sacrifices. I unfolded the second document and turned to the crowd. Mom, I called. Do you remember this? She squinted at the paper, then let out a bitter laugh. Oh, I definitely remember that. I turned back to Frank. This, I said, is proof that when I was 18, I had to get a job while going to school because our dear Uncle Frank drained my mom's savings account. $155,000. Gone just like that. Gasps filled the room. Frank's eyes darted around, looking for a way out. That was a mistake, he stuttered. I didn't mean to. But you did it, I said sharply. And did you ever pay it back? Silence. I turned to my younger cousins. When I was in college, I worked double shifts at a gas station. I ate instant noodles for weeks. And you know why? I pointed at Frank. Because of him. Because my mom, his own sister, had to take out a second mortgage just to keep us afloat. The whispers grew louder. Some of my aunts looked at Frank like he was something disgusting. I wasn't finished. You want to talk about sacrifices, Frank? What about mom skipping doctor's appointments because she couldn't afford them? What about me begging for extra shifts just to pay the electricity bill? What about all the times you promised to pay us back and then just disappeared? Frank's jaw clenched, his face bright red, but before he could try to twist the story again, I stepped forward and finished him off. And let's not forget the best part, I said, my voice full of sarcasm. After all the lies and the money you stole, you had the nerve to show up at my graduation and ask for more. Everyone gasped. Frank's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. He looked around wildly, realizing no one was on his side. I turned to the rest of the family. So, tell me, does that sound like someone who deserves my help? More silence. Frank was breathing heavily, his fists clenched. This is all a setup, he growled. You're just trying to turn everyone against me. I laughed, actually laughed. I don't need to turn anyone against you, Frank. You did that all by yourself. He looked around desperately. His usual tricks weren't working. No one was defending him. He was alone. Then, just when I thought he might give up, Frank did something I'll never forget. He lunged at me. He came at me like a wild animal, his face full of rage. For a second, I thought he was going to hit me, right in the middle of a family gathering. But before he could touch me, my cousin Mark, who's built like a football player, grabbed Frank midair and slammed him onto the couch. The room exploded into chaos. My aunt screamed. My Uncle George jumped up, ready to step in. Frank thrashed around, cursing, his face bright red. Get off me, you piece of— Enough, Mark shouted, shoving him back down. You don't get to pull this crap. I took a deep breath, my hands clenched into fists. I had expected a fight, but not this. Are you out of your mind? My mom snapped, storming over. You're trying to attack your own nephew because he wouldn't bail you out. Frank was furious, but he was also trapped. He knew if he threw another punch, someone would call the cops. And then, something unexpected happened. My Aunt Patricia, who's usually quiet at gatherings, stood up. What she said changed everything. You know what? She said, her voice shaking with anger. I've had enough of this. I wasn't going to say anything, But since Frank wants to talk about who owes who, let's talk about the money he stole from me. Wait, what? Frank's head snapped toward her. Pat, what the hell are you? You took my husband's life insurance money, she said. The room froze. I felt my stomach drop. This was news to me. Patricia's husband, Uncle Rick, had died almost 10 years ago. He was a hard-working man, a good man, everyone in the family respected him. What are you talking about? Frank laughed nervously, but he wouldn't look her in the eye. You tricked me, Patricia hissed, her hands shaking. After Rick died, I was grieving. I trusted you, and you told me you had a great investment opportunity that would double the money. I gave you $330,000. Frank, that was supposed to be for my kids, and you lost it all. People gasped. Frank shook his head frantically. I didn't lose it. It just didn't. Shut up. Patricia's voice cracked. You told me you'd pay it back in a year. It's been 10. Where's my money, Frank? Frank stammered, looking around, desperate for a way out. I stepped forward. Wow. First my mom's savings, then my money, and now Patricia's life insurance payout. I let out a bitter laugh. Tell me, Frank, how many other people here did you scam? Silence. Then another voice. I let him borrow $5,000 last year, my cousin Robert muttered. He said he just needed a little to get back on his feet. Never saw a dime back. More people started speaking up. I gave him $3,000. I gave him $3,000. I gave him 10,000. One by one, half the room started sharing their stories. Frank had taken money from everyone, and suddenly, I realized what this was really about. This wasn't just about getting money from me. Frank was drowning, and the only way he knew how to survive was to find someone else to take advantage of. That person was supposed to be me, but now he was screwed. Frank was breathing hard, his head darting around the room. Okay, look, he said, holding up his hands. I know things got out of hand, but I can fix this. I just need a little more time, a little more help, if we all pitch in. Are you seriously asking us for more money? I snapped. Frank flinched, then, without another word, he ran for the door. Frank, someone yelled, but he didn't stop. He pushed past people, almost knocked over a kid, grabbed his coat, and ran outside, and just like that, he was gone. Frank thought he could run away from everything. He thought he could keep lying, stealing, and manipulating his way through life, leaving behind broken promises and empty bank accounts. But this time, he messed with the wrong people. The second he ran out the door, the family exploded into chaos. My mom was furious. My Aunt Patricia was about to cry. My cousins were angry. And me? I was done. I turned to the room. We have enough proof to take him down. Let's do it. Patricia nodded. I want my money back. So do I, Robert said. One by one, everyone Frank had scammed stepped forward. So, we made a plan. Patricia went to her lawyer the next morning with all her evidence, bank statements, emails, texts, everything. Since Frank had tricked her into giving him the life insurance money with false promises, her lawyer said it was fraud, a crime. Next, I found my loan agreement with Frank, the one he signed but never paid back. Since it was a legal document, I filed a lawsuit against him. Then, one by one, other family members did the same. Robert, my mom, a few aunts, even a cousin in Florida, all of them took legal action. By the time we were done, Frank was facing multiple lawsuits and a fraud investigation. Frank had burned bridges in the family, but he still had friends and connections, people who might believe his lies. So, we made sure they knew the truth. My cousin Sarah, who's great with social media, took the lead. She posted everything, screenshots of texts, proof of bank transfers, even the legal documents. She didn't tag Frank, but it didn't matter. The post went viral in our community. People commented, shared, and messaged their own stories. Turns out, Frank had scammed more than just family. An old landlord said Frank skipped out on rent. A former coworker said Frank stole money from a company Christmas party. Someone even found a GoFundMe page Frank had set up for a fake medical emergency. Frank had been running his scams for years, and now everyone knew. After about 2 weeks, we found out Frank was hiding at a friend's house. Turns out, his business had failed, his credit was maxed out, and with all the lawsuits, he was broke. He called my mom, begging, please, just tell them to drop the lawsuits. He pleaded, I'll pay everyone back, I swear. Mom laughed. Oh, like how you promised to pay me back, like how you promised Patricia, like how you promised everyone? Silence. Then, in the most pathetic voice I've ever heard, he said, I have nowhere to go. Mom smirked. Not my problem, Frank. And then she hung up. Frank tried calling other family members. Nobody answered. He tried reaching out to friends, but they had all seen the social media posts. They weren't falling for his tricks anymore. Within a month, Frank had lost everything. His car was repossessed. He was evicted from his apartment. His business was gone. And then, the final blow, Patricia's lawyer won the fraud case. The court said Frank had to pay back every cent of the $330,000 he stole from her. But guess what? He had no money. So, they took part of his paycheck from every job he tried to get. He tried working under the table, but word got around. Nobody trusted him anymore. It's been about a year since we took Frank down. He still owes thousands to multiple family members. Nobody talks to him. He bounces between low-paying jobs, barely getting by. He has no support system, no friends, nothing. And me? I'm doing great, still successful, still thriving, and best of all, completely free of him. Last I heard, he tried calling my mom again. She didn't even pick up. And that was the best revenge of all.